Words cannot describe how delighted I am. We have a very special guest joining us all the way from the US on Moneycontrol. She, of course, needs no introduction. Indra Nooyi, the former chairperson and CEO of PepsiCo, who's consistently made it on the power list, for the last decade, more than that. And she's in conversation with us, in fact, on her book, My Life in Full. Nonfiction normally takes me a long time to finish, but I can tell you, I finished this book within a week. It was so breezy, and you really brought out your experiences so well. And I think I related to it so much as a working mom, as someone who grew up in Chennai. So, all those aspects really touched me in so many ways. In fact, let's start with the title of the book itself, My Life in Full. And it's literally that. You've put yourself at there in terms of your emotions, your weaknesses, your strengths, the times when you were indecisive and, you were struggling to make decisions. How difficult was it to, lay those experiences bare? Were you worried about being judged about some of the decisions that you made on hindsight?
That's a great question, Chandra. I think that when you're in a position of such high visibility as I was for so many years, I was being judged every day, every minute of the day. Somebody was judging me. And people would form their own opinions about me. People, without even knowing my background, would assume certain things about me. In some ways, I'd say writing this book was a bit cathartic because you just got out the whole story there. And remember, this is not a tell-all. This is more of a informing what I want to do through the arc of my life. So I was just talking about the arc of my life and talking about stuff that I've talked about publicly in the past, except I've talked about it in bits and pieces in different interviews. They all came together. And when they come together to tell a very complete story. So when I actually read this book myself after it was done, you're right. It felt a bit uncomfortable saying, oh my God, nobody's ever watched all my videos together in one shot. Now they're going to be watching it in print. But then after a while, you realize that it's all out there. 80% of the book is out there somewhere in the YouTube world. So
yeah, I remember reading many of the anecdotes that you mentioned in terms of work-life balance, the famous milk episode that was, quietly covered then. But were you also wary that, this could be seen as a memoir by a women leader for women? Because in fact, when I read the book, I honestly wish that, more and more men would read it because there are so many biases, conscious, subconscious, things that they may not even know about that impedes women at the workplace and at home. So have you seen more men responding to this book since the time it came out?
It's interesting. Here in the US, a lot of men are reading the book because many, many corporates here are buying books in bulk and giving it to its people. And so for some reason, India doesn't have that mindset. If I were a corporate leader in India, I would buy a couple of thousand copies and give it to my employees, especially the men also. And let's have a conversation about it. You're right. You're absolutely right that the men in power should read these books and say, what are we missing? What behavior change do we have to make happen?
Right. And, as a woman of color in the US, you sort of highlighted the challenges that you faced at different points in your life, whether it was, going to US for the first time, at the workplace as well. But, you spoke about it and then, you seem to take it in your stride that, okay, fine, this is a challenge, but now let's move on. Again, was that a reflection of your upbringing, what your mother told you or your dad told you? Because you seem to take many things in your stride and, you sort of kept at it and moved on to the next challenge or the next thing that you had to do.
You remember the times that I came to work, there weren't many women. I mean, there weren't women bosses, there weren't women, there were no support systems for women or for international students. People of color, there was nobody in the senior ranks. And so I was breaking ground in so many ways. So in many ways, I had to take it in stride because, unbeknownst to me also, I was creating new frontiers. And I was just happy to be at the table. As an immigrant person of color, I was just happy to be in that seat of power. So to me, I felt like, oh my God, I'm sitting here around this boardroom or sitting around this table, and I have to earn my seat in this place. So anything that I felt was, in retrospect, discriminatory, I just took it in my stride and said, I'll show them that good work will overcome all of these biases. So I just kept plowing on. And I had my family as support, you see. So I could always come home and my husband and kids were there, my mother was there, my in-laws were there, so they could all provide the support structure. Made a huge difference.
But what really kept you going? I remember one page in the book where you talk about, you paint a picture for us. You have your younger daughter on your legs, your older daughter's, snoozing beside you, and you're busy working. And, you ask yourself then, what am I doing? Is this all
Yeah.
really worth it? Now, if you were a founder or an entrepreneur, who had to have skin in the game, you could tell yourself that, I'm the founder of this company, I'm the entrepreneur, and I have to, plow on, keep on. But as an executive, as someone who was working in the company, what did you tell yourself when you had these moments of self-doubts and you had to really motivate yourself to keep going?
Therein lies the issue, because I actually thought I was the founder of PepsiCo. That's the way I felt every day. It was funny. I never felt like a hired hand. I felt like this is my company. There are 250,000 people and their families that depend on how I lead this company. And I cannot let them down. I owe this company a duty of care. So I never one day thought about this as it's just a company. I walked into the office every day saying, this is my company. And that's where, Chandra, I tell you, I was different than most. Because to me, PepsiCo was very, very personal.
But how does one really build that entrepreneurial mindset at work? Because it's also a reflection of the workplace, the bosses you have, the teams that you work in. So can one do that at an individual level, or does there also have to be an enabling environment for that?
There has to be an enabling environment. If the environment constantly bats you down and ignores you and treats you, not so well, you can't develop that level of affection and commitment to the job. In my case, I had bosses who were just unbelievable, made me feel welcome. Of course, I did my part. Don't get me wrong, but they made me feel welcome. They challenged me. They told me I did terrible if I didn't do well, but they also gave me a lot of compliments when I did well. And I felt like they included me in every major decision. And so in many ways, I am a product of that mentorship I had from those people.
Right. And your views on salary hike, it caused quite a stir. And you subsequently clarified that. You said it's more to do with my upbringing and my cultural values, but I wouldn't ask for a hike. But this is a larger issue. I remember Sheryl Sandberg spoke about this a few years ago when she was writing Lean In, that women always hold back from asking for what they want at the workplace because A, either they are not heard, or B, they are judged for being too aggressive. So is that also something that kind of shaped your views on compensation? Would you do it differently if you were working today?
So I have two daughters who are both working, and I keep telling them to make sure they're paid at parity with their male counterparts. I always tell them, and if you're not, I said, you better go ask for it, because there's no way you should not be paid as much as the men are for the same job. So I believe in pay parity with a passion. In fact, I write in the book about how I focused on pay parity at PepsiCo.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's take that discussion off the table. I have total conviction that pay parity should have happened long time ago. All right. Second is, I don't think women should even ask for it because HR department should be looking at this constantly. Why should women have to find out they're being paid less? You get me? That's why you have HR department. So my point is, if it gets to a point where you find out you're being paid less and you have to go and ask, somebody ought to ask HR, how did you let this happen? Yeah, I have a different perspective, right? Wouldn't you say so? Somebody in HR knows that for the same job, I'm paying Chandra less than I'm paying somebody else. That is unacceptable. Simply, totally unacceptable. Let me come to my situation. Until I was president, I was clear in saying that I saw other people get stock options. I didn't. But I was getting a lot of money. Don't forget, at the senior levels, I was making a lot of money. And I was just happy to have a seat at the table. Thank God I kept my seat at the table. I can be a role model to you guys. And my cultural upbringing was, you do a good job, people will take care of you. That's how, you were brought up in Chennai. I was brought up that way. So I didn't say anything. Once I became president in 2000, my boss adjusted my salary massively, gave me a big slug of stock options. After that, my salary is public record. The board decides it, I don't. And the board does public comparisons and pays me quite well. When you're making tens of millions of dollars, the last thing you think about is, can you give me $500,000 more? I think that's stupid. I was being paid very well, and I was doing a great job, and that was all that was important to me.
Right. And in terms of the leadership skills that a CEO of a multinational company would need today compared to a few years ago, what would it be? What are the most crucial leadership skills according to you?
Well, being a CEO is tough. In today's world, CEOs are being asked to do more and more and more.
Yeah.
7 years ago, Chandra, you had to have a China strategy. Now people are questioning, what is your China alternative strategy? You needed to have a Russia strategy. Now nobody talks about a Russia strategy. So, geopolitics is entering into how companies have to run their business more and more and more. Supply chains, we were writing about the world is flat. Now we're thinking about supply chains differently. For companies, it's very hard to swing the pendulum. You can't just move assets overnight. And so one big requirement for CEOs is they have to understand foreign policy of the governments of the countries they're domiciled in. They've really got to understand that. Second, I think CEOs have to become increasingly people who understand social issues and how to react to it. Okay. In the US, I tell you, they have to figure out how to navigate through all of the issues very, very carefully. If they speak out, they're criticized. If they don't speak out, they're criticized. So they have to learn that. They have to learn how to do talent management. It's a tough one because you've got to hire and retain the best and the brightest. How do you do outstanding talent management? That's also very important. And then the other one I'd say is, with technology changing so much around us, CEOs have to become tech savvy so that they can adapt and adopt their company. Adapt their company and adopt these technologies to move the company forward. But you can't do that unless you yourself become a student. So CEOs today have to be lifelong students, understand the technology, think about whether they should roll the dice to bringing the technologies into the company. So it's a new world out there. And either you can look at it as, boy, this is exciting, or, oh my God, what am I doing? One of the two.
And what's your take on, the increasing wokeism that we are seeing, not just in the political sphere, but also in the corporate sphere in the US? I remember former US President Barack Obama called this out and said, you know what? It is a messy world. There are ambiguities. There are very good people with flaws. So, you can't just run a hashtag on Twitter and hope to solve the world's problems. How do you see this impeding how a CEO functions? Because, that is an additional layer. Sundar Pichai also has to look at this apart from the P&L at Alphabet.
Well, when we put labels against everything, it sounds awful. Don't put labels. Go behind the label and find out what is the issue. Why are people feeling like they're discriminated against? Why do people feel it's not a level playing field? Think through what the underlying issues are. The problem is we focus too much on the label and we forget the underlying issue. So at every point, I've chosen to forget all of these hashtags and these labels like everything is woke. All that woke means is that I woke up one morning and found out this is an issue. That's all woke is. People make it look like woke is a cancel culture. No, it's not. Relax. It's, you woke up one morning and found out this was an issue. My point is go behind the labels and say, what's the issue? And once you go behind the labels, you have a very different appreciation of what the issue is. And then you can really talk about how to address it. Very different approach than saying, oh, I can't deal with all these, hashtags and this wokeism. I can't deal with it.
Right.
That's a cop-out.
Right. And if you were a Gen Z or a millennial today, what would you do differently?
It's a different world. Gen Z, millennials and then Gen Zs live in a different world than my generation. The world is changing rapidly around you. All the technologies you have, like even this technology you and I are talking through, didn't exist when I was there. Had I had these technologies, I'd have gone home at 3 o'clock, been with my kids, and then hooked back to the office. Didn't have any of those technologies. had to travel all the time, didn't have these technologies to talk to my people. And so I think you can actually think about how to juggle work and family in much more profound ways than we could. So I think technology may have its dark side, but by and large, it can also be used to help young family builders somehow juggle their home and work life a lot. So I'm telling the young people, be optimistic about the future.
Right. You've in fact led me to my next question, which is, what would your advice to women be? I know you get this asked a lot, and you were the only one who said a few years ago, what, you can't have it all, you have to prioritize, because it's impossible to be a superwoman who has 48 hours in a day when everyone else has 24 hours. So what would your advice be for women who want to have it all? In the current scenario, because ironically, the number of women leaving the workforce in the last year has actually gone up despite this technology we talk about, despite remote working we talk about, because women are just exhausted around the world.
So, first of all, I think women left the workforce because there was technology, but children were not in schools. I think we found out that school is as much a childcare as it is a place of learning.
Yeah.
I think we as women have to let go of perfection because we all want to be perfect at everything. Okay? We have to let go of perfection. We have to co-opt a support structure. We have to make sure our partner is an equal partner, not a silent partner, in helping with the household chores and family caring and everything. So I'll speak for me, my husband and I, we divide the responsibilities equally, household management and children management. And so that has to happen because children are family, not female. Okay? And so it's important that both the people who created the family have equal responsibility. And where there is multi-generational living, multi-generations have to help, not hinder the young woman from working. And all that I say to you is today more than ever, all of you are so talented, Chandra. I talk to all of you women. You're all brilliant. You've got great presence. You're hungry. You want economic freedom. You want to earn your own money. Don't forget that. Keep those hopes and dreams. And let's figure out how to create the support structure around you.
Right.
Please.
Right. A final part of the interview, let me ask you about India. You wrote in the final part of the book, that I left India over 4 decades ago, but India has never left me. In terms of your habits, in terms of how you are as a person, it's always remained an intrinsic part of your identity. The way you look at India today, what concerns you and what really makes you optimistic?
I think what makes me optimistic is that India is becoming more entrepreneurial, a lot more startups, a lot more unicorns coming out of India. And I see the innovation coming out of the Indian entrepreneurial system. It's very India specific and it's scaling up fast. So I feel very, very good about that. I also feel good about the fact that while India's traditional values have evolved, they've evolved in a sensible way in many families, not all, many families. What do I feel worried about? I still believe there's a lot more work to be done regarding women in India. It's interesting that we have more laws on the books in India than any other country that help women, actually. Yeah. But the problem is if you can't implement those laws in a timely way, or the laws are circumvented, then it's even bigger an affront because you have the laws and you can't be protected by the laws.
Yeah, in fact, the female participation in the workforce has been dropping in India at a time when it's going up in countries such as Bangladesh.
I think we have to sit down and ask those questions why. Not generally, but segment by segment. Why are women dropping out of, industry, vertical A, B, C, and D? Is it in managerial levels? Is it in the front line? I think there's a very systematic analysis somebody has got to do. And I think the final thing is something else you asked me, Chandra. I think the men in power have to be brought to the table to talk about how to hire and retain the best talent. And that includes women. How to create a work environment that enables young women to be family builders as well as great contributors to work. Because at the end of the day, India needs all its talent to grow the country. And that is the competitive advantage of India.
Right. My final couple of questions. How similar or different are you from your mother when, you parent your children? You've often said that, she's a study in contrast. She would want you to become the prime minister of the country, but she will also want you to get married and have children. So, how similar or different are you? Because as you get older, you tend to become more and more like your mom in the way you think and behave.
I can't afford to do that because I'm in a different culture. My children were born in a different culture. So whatever I think, swallow and I say, I've got to make sure that I'm sensitive to my children who were born and brought up in a different culture because I chose to come here, right? My children didn't choose to be born here. I chose to build a family here and give birth to them here. I would say that there are elements of my Indian upbringing that I imbibe to them. So, how we run the household and things like that. But otherwise, all that I've told them is dream, do whatever you want to be. And, whatever literally you want to be in the arts and music and the NGO world and the corporate world, whatever you want is okay. Just do what your heart desires. And when you get married and have kids, I'm there to help.
Right.
So that's where I am.
Right. And what also, what I also saw about your style as a leader or as an individual is that you're inherently pragmatic. You're always sort of finding a solution. You're not, getting stuck or overthinking it. How did that happen? Again, has it evolved? Were you always like that?
I don't know. I think I may have always been like that, Chandra. I don't know. But it was always the job has to get done. And lots of obstacles will be thrown at you when you have to get the job done. So you've always got to reconceptualize the situation. So if there's a barrier, figure out how to go around it. At the end of the day, I'm not going to go to somebody and say, oh, I have too many barriers. I can't go to my boss. In fact, I would argue that that's a skill that all people have to learn. When you're given a job to do, focus on getting the job done. Don't ever go to your boss and talk about the 4 obstacles you have to deal with. Sometimes I can't stand it when people come to me, well, I couldn't get it done because, this temperature was too high or I had this problem coming here. Don't figure out a way to just get it done. That's what differentiates a great leader from, just another player.
Do you have political ambitions?
No, zero.
That's going to disappoint your mother. I think you said, that she could have been India's prime minister if she wanted to.
That's okay. I mean, I'm happy to disappoint her on this score. But she herself will tell me that I have great admiration for people in politics, Chandra, really do, because it's tough to be in politics. I have great admiration for all of those people, but I want to observe them from afar because I don't have the skills that they do.
Right. And finally, will you look at, giving back to India in a different way, perhaps on the boards of startups or companies here, getting involved in initiatives here? Is that something that you would like to do in the next part of your journey?
So one of the things I would like to do is think about how to develop, especially in communities that are not wealthy, for the frontline workers, for people in rural areas, create centers where they can have childcare, maternal care, like the Anganwadi system, but take it to the 4.0, not what it is now. And I say 4.0 because I want to reimagine it and do some test cases in some parts of the country to see how to support those women who desperately need to work, but don't know where to leave their children when they go to work. And therefore, these children miss out on a lot of schooling in the early days.
Interesting. We look forward to that. And we'll also look forward to having you in India very soon, to meet you and get my copy of your book autographed. But on that note, thank you very much for talking to Moneycontrol and being as candid as you always have been. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chandra. Very nice to meet you.